people on my channel want to know what you think about what Brock Purdy did. This was a bad game. It was also probably the worst game we'll see. It was definitely the worst game we have seen from Brock Purdy. I don't imagine he'll play worse than that in the future. 4 picks, no turnovers, left the game with an injury. What happened to Brock Purdy against the Ravens?
What happened to Brock Purdy against the Ravens is that the Ravens defensive coaches did a phenomenal job, and they understood that Brock Purdy's had a ton of success throwing with anticipation to spots, generally in the middle of the field. And so what they did was they packed the field in those spots with lots and lots of bodies. The Niners helped them out by compressing their many of their formations. Niners like to go with compressed formations, and it gave the corner blitz a more viable option of getting home. And so you saw the Ravens do what they normally don't do, Grant. They normally blitz up the A gaps and in the middle of the field with linebackers. They did that early on that first drive, and the Niners burned them with Kittle in the middle of the field. So they started blitzing the Niners off the edges and eliminating any of the hot routes, knowing that the 49ers and Brock Purdy want to throw to spots in the middle of the field. And so they just packed those spots with bodies. They brought pressure off the edges, and they benefited from the Niners' condensed formula or condensed formations, and they got pressure on Purdy. So I think the total was 39 pressures and like 46 dropbacks, something like that. I don't have them in front of me, but it was a lot of pressures. They burned Colton McKivitz badly. They realized he was the weak link. And I really credit McDonald. I thought he had a superior game plan. And it really, the way the Niners kind of Nick Bosa said, hey, you know what? We have the solution to beat Jalen Hurts, and we'll see if the Cowboys copy our solution. I think it's going to be really interesting this week to see if the Commanders copy what the Ravens did and if Brock Purdy can adjust.
I'm with you on that. I do think it was deeper than that. Yes, the Ravens had a phenomenal game plan that maybe not every team can pull off, but I think it's clear. I think Purdy acknowledged it. He started pressing. It snowballed for him a little bit. He threw a pick on the first drive of the game, and I thought he got worse as the game went on. Like, not all those picks were his fault. He did have a couple picks that were dropped, but let's look at the third pick, for example.
Terrible. I thought this was his worst play, actually.
Right?
Kyle didn't think it was Kyle didn't make it seem like it was a bad play at all. I thought it was
a terrible play.
It's late
what happened was
in the middle of
there's
the
a
field.
penalty on the Niners on the play. He scrambles out of the pocket and throws back across his left to George Kittle, who's covered. Even if Kittle catches the ball, it's not going to count because it's a penalty on the 49ers.
Right.
So you took a risk that couldn't have paid off. And like, I clearly he didn't know in the situation, but that's an example of something that I think Purdy would normally be all over. But he was pressing in that game, and we haven't seen that from him. He's known for his poise. So what did you think of that?
I thought it was a terrible play. It was a bad mistake. Once again, it was late in the down. Now, the one thing that we can't say definitively, or we can't say either way, is that we don't know. Brock didn't know. First of all, I wasn't sure at the end of the game if he even saw the flags on the field. But then he did acknowledge that he did see the flags. But even when he saw the flags, that didn't change his mindset. He said afterwards, hey, you know what? I'm thinking make a play, make a play, make a play. Where we're thinking throw the ball away, take the penalty, and move on to the next down. So that's just another one of those situations that they got to go through it and say, what is our mindset here? But think about it. We assumed that where the flags were thrown, that it was was going to be on the Niner offensive line, and subsequently it was. He didn't know who the flag was on, so he thought maybe he was going to be hyper aggressive on the play and try to drive the ball. And instead, he should have thrown it into the ground because he was going to get nothing either way. It was a mental mistake.
I guess I'm asking you more, not just that play in particular, but the way I saw it was he was hot early. He was feeling himself on the first drive. He gets over aggressive on that throw into the end zone when he should have just checked it down to use check. He gets picked off, and then he starts pressing. I've never seen him do that before because, frankly, he usually starts off hot and doesn't do things like that. What did you think of, or did you see him pressing? And if so, what did you?
I definitely thought he was pressing. I thought he was pressing because the windows that he was normally throwing into in the middle of the field that have normally been wide open were being packed with bodies and hunted by really smart defenders who were anticipating those throws. So I think that Brock Purdy was feeling pressure up front from the rush, but more he was feeling pressure from the coverage that was designed very well by McDonald to be sitting exactly in the spots that Brock typically has had success throwing the football. So now we're going to find out if he can adjust, because guess what? When you put something like that on film, teams copy it and they say, oh, you know what? Brock likes to throw with anticipation because he doesn't have the biggest arm like other guys. He'll get there with timing by throwing with anticipation to spots, to receivers who are in those spots. Well, let's figure out where those spots are and put as many bodies as we can near those spots. And the Ravens got their hands on a number of footballs in this game. They closed the space.
Sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead. No, I was just saying, offensive football is about creating space. Defensive football is about closing down the space. The Ravens figured out where Brock wanted to go with the ball and closed down those spaces really well. And subsequently, I'm sure he felt the pressure.
So here's what I've kind of noticed. Tell me what you think. Brock threw a bunch of picks in training camp, and we all decided afterward it didn't matter, but it happened. And in retrospect, he was facing the 49ers defense, who have Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, two of the best linebackers in the game. It seems if Brock goes against a great defense that has great linebackers, that's a tough matchup for him, because he can't just throw over the middle with impunity like he normally does. And he's forced to try throws that he isn't as comfortable with. And the turnovers happen. His worst performances of the season came against Cleveland and Baltimore. Those are the two best pass defenses in the league in terms of yards per attempt. The top 5 are Baltimore, Cleveland, Jets, Kansas City, and the Niners. So if Brock has to face Baltimore in the Super Bowl or Cleveland in the Super Bowl, can the Niners feel confident that there's an adjustment they can make, or would they privately feel, man, this team might have Brock's number?
I don't know if it's just have a number, but I think one of the things that they thought they were going to get in this game is they thought, the Ravens wound up using Darby more and taking the Mollett. And I think the Niners thought they were going to be able to pick on Mollett a little bit, and instead it was Darby. And then Ravens went with Humphrey inside. So that was like a wrinkle that I think McDonald threw at him. I think ultimately, Grant, what we're talking about, though, is the Ravens have some really good players in the middle of the field. Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen, maybe as fast of linebacker group as, we talk about Fred all the time in coverage. Those guys are so good in coverage, Grant, that it takes pressure off of their corners. So that's one thing. Then you go to that next level. Geno Stone, former Iowa Hawkeye, ball hawk. Tremendous ball hawk. And then Kyle Hamilton might be the best interior player, in the secondary in the entire league. So they just have a lot of talent. And then they moved Humphrey inside and used Darby outside. And it gave them a lot of experience and a lot of talent. They had a great plan and they executed it really, really well. So I don't think it's like the Niners are going to fear the Ravens, but the Kyle Shanahan, I thought, got outcoached in this game a little bit, from the standpoint of every team has an advantage based on their personnel that they can utilize. Kyle didn't utilize his well. The Niner advantage on the Ravens in this game was the Ravens are dead last or near the very bottom of the league at defending 21 and 22 personnel, 2 backs with the fullback. And the Niners came out in the first quarter, and instead of having a 2-to-1 run-pass ratio, they had a 2-to-1 pass-run ratio, and they didn't play to their strengths. I think there's a way to beat the Ravens the next time out, but it's at running the ball with juice on the field and having that 2-back look. And I don't think the Niners did that enough. And I asked Kyle about it today.
That's their identity. I'm sorry.
And he went into, you're right. No, you're totally right. That is their identity.
If you're confident that you're better than the Ravens, you go with your identity. This is what we always do. We're not doing anything special for you.
They got a little pass happy against the defense that was really well schemed to stop their passing game. And they didn't lean on their strength and the Ravens' weakness. I mean, the Ravens have the number 1 D, right? It's really difficult to find.
Not against the run. Sorry.
But you're right. Not against the run.
And McCaffrey really not against running to the left. It was working.
Oh, I know. They ran to the left at will. How many games do you see where you get blown out averaging like 7.9 yards per carry.
It shouldn't happen. That's a failure of coaching. They came out in the third quarter, got the ball first down, first play is toss right. Toss right? Why? Behind McKivitz? Who are you kidding, man? Like, why are you trying to trick this team? You're better than the Ravens. You outgained them. Just call your best play. One of the things I liked about Harbaugh, we're getting off topic, but one of the things I liked about Harbaugh when he was a coach of the Niners is he would sort of, he would kind of get off on calling power, knowing it's coming and you can't stop it. It's like, yeah, I don't care. Oh, I'm calling power. Yep. I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
Like, Kyle, everyone knows that your best play is toss left. What are you so shy about? Call it a lot. You're going to win the Super Bowl behind Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey calling that play. What is the big deal? What are you saving it for?
I really felt like the Niners, I mean, it's two feelings, right? It's one, like, I don't really feel like fear that running into the Ravens again. I just think that they didn't have their best plan. They didn't, and also they didn't have
offense or defense.
Yeah, and they didn't have one of their best players. I mean, just being down there today and talking to T.Y. McGill and some of the other D linemen, it's like they miss Eric Armstead, man. Eric Armstead at this point is not just a pretty good lineman. He's like the emotional leader of the defense. He's their dominant player, run, pass. He allows them to do a lot of different things. They miss him bad. They held him out for the foot. He's, and it's obviously a serious injury. Today they added Sebastian Joseph Day, which only adds more concern to, is Armstead's deal going to be a season ender? So you just don't know. But they missed Armstead. I think they also made a mistake in this game. Samuel Womack had been playing pretty well, and they made him inactive for this game, and then promoted
Verrett can come in and give him a touchdown,
who hasn't played a lot of football in a long time.
Yeah.
And yet, in Womack's, it's a young man's game, man. And I just really believe in Womack and Luter and going with those guys. Why? Because they're young, ascending players, not an older player. But they see something in Verrett. He had some good practices. They wanted to get him on the field. So they
I felt like it was a panic move. I feel like it's a desperation move. Why are you searching for something? Are you that intimidated by the Ravens? Your team should be good enough. You're supposed to be the best team in the league. You don't need to do something tricky like that. Anyway, let's get some
play to your strengths on offense a little bit more. Dominate the time of possession. Take the ball out of Brock's hands a little bit, and put it. Christian McCaffrey,
the best running back in the league.
Yeah, you got the best running back in the league. Just don't
Purdy's really good.
Purdy's really good, but he's young.
He wasn't the best quarterback in the
league. And I'll say one other thing too, and this is, to me, was appropriate. The guy who is the MVP played like the MVP.
Yes.
Lamar doesn't. I want to compliment Lamar and rip the Ravens at the same time. Justice Hill, just a guy. Gus Edwards, just a guy. Every receiver they have outside of Zay Flowers.
Isaiah Likely's decent. Zay Flowers, I think, is a player.
Yeah,
but Odell
Zay
Beckham
Flowers
Jr.?
and Likely are solid. Flowers even better than solid.
Flowers
Likely's really
solid.
Odell
Beckham.
Too. The rest of those guys, Beckham used to be really good, but they're not now. Those guys, Aguilar, those guys are just guys.
Aguilar.
I to me that Lamar could go against the Niners defense and look that good. Yeah, Monken. How much of it was Monken? I just thought Lamar, they had a good plan, but I just thought Lamar's execution and his courage and his mobility and his playmaking ability. How about the Chase Young missed tackle on the 30-yard run down to the 10 on 3rd and 14? That was the play of the game.
Yeah. It's one of the most incredible plays I've ever seen by a quarterback, that run. Watch in slow motion. Watch Fred Warner jump the wrong way, and then Jair Brown jump the wrong. I don't even blame him. Lamar Jackson is just that incredible. Let's get some super chat.
Is the MVP. And he showed it. He really did.
Yeah. That's what you got to do. And you know what? He's in his prime. Purdy will have other opportunities. He's going to be here for a while.